And thank you, James, and thanks to AMP for their support. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to the Funding Network. 6 minutes isn't long to talk about stroke. Stroke is a huge issue in this country. Has anyone in this room had a stroke and brave enough to put their hand up? I'm not surprised. Has anyone perhaps got a relative or a loved one, a wife, an uncle, a friend that's had a stroke? If you're brave enough to put your hands up? Lots of people. That's not surprising either. It affects 1 in 6 people in the country, and shortly we'll have 500,000 people in this country living with the effects of stroke. Creates long-term chronic disability, and it's a killer. And if you survive it, some people question whether it's better to survive it or better for it to take you. So tonight won't be all doom and gloom, but I've got to paint the doom because stroke's a really massive issue. And the good thing about tonight is the challenge with stroke is created not by its size, but by the fact that our healthcare system is a little behind the times. And what research is telling us now doesn't align with what our healthcare system is providing. So, key word for tonight is neuroplasticity. Has anyone heard of neuroplasticity? Okay, great. Some people, maybe some of the same people that have had that stroke experience. It's not going to be a clinical discussion about neuroplasticity, but neuroplasticity is important. Most people, when they have a stroke, go to hospital for 1 or 2 weeks. They think their life is over. They can't walk, they can't speak, they can't use their hands. They sit there in a stunned sort of silence while people fuss around them. Less than half of those people go on to rehab, according to a national survey. The picture's getting worse, isn't it? We're thinking, my God, let's hope I don't have a stroke on the way home from the TFN tonight. After that short burst of rehab, they're released into the wild. And when they're released into the wild, most of them go into a black hole. It's maybe why no one here tonight seems to either have had a stroke or has put their hand up, because it's a really dark hole. So our healthcare system gives people around 5 weeks, give or take, when they're in crisis, loads them up with pamphlets and says, good luck, that's all we can do for you under our tight health constraints. What research tells us is that 5 weeks is only the beginning for stroke. Latest research tells us that people can improve and recover for up to 5 years post-stroke because the brain starts rewiring. The bit that used to help you to speak that was damaged gets taken over by another bit, and the bit that helped you walk that was damaged gets taken over by another bit. And it's in fact incredible what we can do with 1% of our brains. So that's enough about that. The solution that we need is not that complex. It's just that we need to give people more than 5 weeks when they throw in their job and their life and think that life is over, and give them a lot longer. About 4 weeks ago, I met a guy called Paul. He was a welder down in Portland in Victoria, big strong bloke. He had a stroke at 35. If I could have bought someone tonight to talk about what daily support and long-term rehab means for someone, I would have bought him. He's the only person I would have wanted to bring. He's backpacking for 4 months through Europe at the moment with a girl who he met. And he's 9 years on from stroke. When he had his stroke, he lay in the hospital with a big scar on his head, and he'd had the pressure removed out of his head. He'd had, brain surgery. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, and quote unquote, he said, I thought my life was over. And the first week that he was away from rehab, he tried to walk the length of the oval. He walked 10 metres. But here he is backpacking. He reckons he swims twice as fast now as he did before the stroke because he's rewired his brain. So we have an issue. We need to use research to build a bridge to get people out of the hospital, away from a black hole and back into the community. The problem is the healthcare sector can't do that. We're a small association. We affiliate with associations around the country, here in New South Wales, Queensland and beyond, and they're all watching us in Victoria, which is, as a Victorian, we love to, be the leaders, as we think we are. They're watching and waiting for us to try and get this pilot off the ground, whereby we're getting people from hospital and we're connecting them with volunteers through a lot of groups like Rotary. Rotary have formed a partnership with us in Victoria, like-minded people wanting to get other people back on their feet. And we're taking them from hospital, we're getting them into an environment in a community setting funded by councils and philanthropists, and we're pairing them up with people to take them on a journey back through rehabilitation long-term rehabilitation and back to their jobs. AMP have been great supporters, as have others, but one of the key things that we're doing in this process is when they have the stroke and they're 2 weeks in hospital, and many of you who have been through this with a loved one will know it's crisis time, the people and their carers, who it becomes real crisis for, often throw in the towel within the first 6 weeks. They're out of annual leave, they're out of support, and they say, there's no way I'm going back to work. I can't even if they could say that, I can't even walk. But neuroplasticity, that's the word for the night, kicks in, and suddenly the brain starts to find new ways of doing things. And 3 months on, they can walk. And 6 months on, they realise that if they still had their job, they could probably go back a day a week or two and not sit at home on Centrelink or on a pension.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. James Allen.
Thanks, everyone.